The FBI has agreed to reopen a Freedom of Information Act request by the American Center for Law and Justice regarding that secret meeting between President Obama's Attorney General, Loretta Lynch, and Bill Clinton. This is all during Hillary Clinton's email investigation. Now the ACLJ wants all of those documents that the FBI has on that meeting. Earlier, I spoke with the executive director at the ACLJ, Sekulow, about the investigation going forward. All right, Jordan, just a couple of days ago, the FBI agreed to reopen a very important FOIA request into that meeting between Loretta Lynch and Bill Clinton. Now, of course, most of the press, including us, have that fact out there. We got that out there on Wednesday. But what does this mean? What's the latest with regards to what the FBI is willing to provide on this? Because this has been a year-long mission for you guys.
That's right. We filed this more than a year ago, the FOIA request with each respective department, Department of Justice, and then the agency, the FBI, because you file those separately. Even though DOJ oversees FBI, they have their separate FOIA offices. DOJ never responded, so we took them to court. That's ultimately what led to, just a couple weeks ago, the 413 pages of emails about this meeting between Loretta Lynch and Bill Clinton on the Tarmac in Phoenix being released. And we saw there that there were these redactions made by the FBI. Now, that was interesting to us because back in October, the FBI sent us a letter saying they did a search and they couldn't find any documents related to the Loretta Lynch and Bill Clinton Tarmac meeting. And so, again, now we got this. We contacted the FBI after we got the Department of Justice documents because we saw FBI officials in the documents. And so, lo and behold, and this is, you don't often get this, but I hold it in my hand because it's so unique, is a letter from the FBI to us reopening the FOIA and doing a new search. So if they don't comply the right way, we'll do what we did with the Department of Justice. We'll take them to court. But I think that they kind of have to now, Patrick, because it's clear from the documents we already have that FBI officials are involved in discussions in emails that have been forwarded. Interesting enough, there's a special counsel connection, Patrick. Peter Carr is on one of those emails. He was a DOJ press official from the criminal division, interesting enough. He got an email from the FBI's press office, this was from our FOIA, about whether or not Bill Clinton and Loretta Lynch's security details coordinated the timing of the meeting. Now, that would be very important to know because that would mean that this was not some, offhanded random meeting that happened, with 30 minutes notice, but that, in fact, the security details were involved. Even if they knew a couple of hours before, that means DOJ, FBI officials, all that stuff Jim Comey talked about under oath would all be implicated. So this has very real implications for what's happening now. And this Peter Carr, the spokesperson for DOJ criminal, guess where he is now the spokesperson for? Robert Mueller and the special counsel's office.
I was going in that direction. Can you get past those redactions? How possible is it to get this without redactions?
It's interesting that the Department of Justice, Patrick, their first comment on these redactions, because the redactions are mostly talking points that were made for the public. Now, it's one thing if they want to redact their back and forth on formulating the talking points, but why are all of the talking points redacted? Now, these are talking points that went to FBI, DOJ. Some may have been used. Some may have not been used. We don't know because they're redacted. But that is not what is usually covered by executive privilege or the deliberative process. In the government, when you assert privilege like this and then redact, you are supposed to be saying, well, we were deliberating. That's what the law says. But that only applies to statutes, rules, regulations, not talking points. So we're in discussions now. Again, you want to start there. You don't want to have to go to court. Court takes a longer time. But if they don't comply with releasing more of this info and unredacting it, if you will, Patrick, then we will take Department of Justice to court to get these redactions, to get these talking points. Because I think they'll probably shed a lot of light on the back and forth that was ongoing.
Well, with these talking points, one of those being how do we approach the press? And the ACLJ, in these emails has this possible collusion between the DOJ and the media. So when you rank these talking points or your approach, when you rank your approach in this investigation, how big is this investigation?
I think, Patrick, some of these talking points were probably never utilized because the mainstream media did what the Department of Justice wanted to do. In fact, in some of the emails you have the New York Times editing their story and putting in Lynch and Clinton meeting about the Attorney General. And so you have the New York Times reporter saying he was pressed into service, but then editing his story. Washington Post said he thinks he can put this to rest if he just gets a question or two answered. So now some people look at that and say, well, that's a journalistic tactic. If you actually look, though, at the stories that they were so blah and investigation, and we've got a lot of connections. So I think, again, how was the Department of Justice preparing to respond to this if it went further? Is probably in those talking points, and they didn't have to utilize all of them. Now, that we talk a lot in this case about this was to protect Loretta Lynch, but also Hillary Clinton, because this was, again, during the campaign while she's under investigation. So think about this. The FBI and Department of Justice are investigating Hillary Clinton, and the FBI director ultimately comes out and saying maybe there wasn't criminal activity. That was bizarre from Jim Comey, but it was certainly grossly negligent, which is criminal. So he used that term. But understand that at the same time, that same FBI and DOJ, their press officials, are protecting not just Loretta Lynch, but the Clintons.
All right, well, we'll all be looking forward to what's next on your part, the ACLJ and the Senate Judiciary Committee that's investigating as well into this clandestine meeting between Lynch and Clinton. Now, before we go, though, I wanted you to give our viewers a sense of how they can find your broadcast, your radio show, Sekulow Live, which you're a co-host of. Sure.
And, Patrick, I want to know that we prepared all this and have sent it to the Senate Judiciary Committee, though the ranking Democrat member, Dianne Feinstein, her chief counsel for the Senate committee was the chief counsel to Loretta Lynch during this. She's in the email, so there's some concern there. But on our broadcast, and thanks for this opportunity,
of course,
we broadcast every day live, noon to 1 p.m. Eastern Time. And people can listen to that on radio stations, Sirius XM. But we also bring people into the studio, as I am right now, by camera, so people can join that way online. We broadcast through our Facebook pages, the Sekulow Facebook page, and on Twitter through Periscope, through ACLJ, through Jordan Sekulow, and Sekulow there. So there's a lot of ways to catch the broadcast. And obviously, if you don't listen to it live, you can always go and see the video and listen at any time during the day.
Great. All right. Jordan Sekulow, the Executive Director of the American Center for Law and Justice. As always, thank you so much for your time.